Hello and welcome. Today we will talk about ethical leadership, chapter 11 of the textbook. In this chapter about ethical leadership, we will try to demonstrate the importance of leadership in creating an ethical culture in any organization. We will try to define the term ethical leadership and explore its relationship to ethical decision making. Then we will look at the requirements of ethical leadership as part of this leadership process, followed by how ethical leadership actually can benefit any organization that you work for or that you manage or that you basically create. And the relationship between ethical leadership and organizational culture is also very important for all of us to examine, so we'll explore some of that as well. So an important part of leadership is the implementation of employee-centered leadership. Employee-centered leadership does recognize that while not everyone will be a manager, but every employee can and should practice effective leadership skills in order to support ethical decision making as part of your organization's culture. With regards to this chapter about ethical leadership, let us begin with defining what we mean by ethical leadership. Leadership is your ability or authority to guide and direct others toward a predefined or set goal or objective. Ethical leadership creates an ethical culture, at least its consistency over time. If top leaders fail to express desired ethical behaviors and goals, a corporate culture eventually evolves on its own to reflect the values and the norms of the company that's being demonstrated or expressed by those influential managers or those who are in positions of power. So leadership has a significant impact on ethical decision making because leaders have the power to motivate others and to enforce the organization's norms, their policies, and the various perspectives that have developed over time in any corporate culture. Ethical leadership has a positive relationship with organizational citizenship behaviors of employees, and it has a negative relationship with deviance or with misconduct on the part of the employees. So ethical leadership has been proven empirically to positively impact the behaviors of individuals and obviously to socialize the group members to basically not condone the behaviors of those who deviate from the norm or from what the company actually expects of them. All responsible employees need to engage in ethical decision making and to exhibit ethical leadership characteristics regardless of their position, because again, leadership is about influencing positively everybody, either sideways, down, up, or even crossways. So leadership is not about position power, it's basically about your character, the level of respect others have for you, and thereby your level of influence in the organization. Many chief executive officers articulate usually the company's core values, but some of them fail to exhibit ethical leadership despite the fact that they are in senior level positions. There's a concept of normative myopia, which occurs when managers overlook or stifle the importance of core values in their business decisions. This can lead to ethical blindness. Ethical blindness, or the propensity to rationalize in unethical action, or even to turn a blind eye toward it. So we don't want people to have a blind eye toward ethical decisions. Top managerial support for core values is therefore crucial to the acceptance and implementation of core values within the organization. And also, a leader must be able to provide a standard of conduct for all his or her employees. Now, failure to show or demonstrate good leadership qualities at the top of the organization creates the perspective that managers either do not care about the company's ethics program, or they just feel that they are above ethics and compliance requirements. So as leaders, you really have to be role models of the standards that you expect of others. After all, isn't that what Mahatma Gandhi said over 70 years ago in India? Be the change that you expect of others. So if you're a role model of a change, then obviously others will do what you do, regardless of what you say. So it's best when you actually do and say in order to create this ethical culture in any organization. So what are the requirements for ethical leadership? Well, ethical leadership skills developed through years of training, through experience, and through learning other best practices of leadership, either by experiencing it yourself or by watching others, observing others, reading textbooks, going to workshops, going to school, and obviously reading history in what others have done to achieve positive results. Leadership qualities, however, differ for each situation. That's what we call situational leadership. We know that ethical leaders must model the organization's values, and ethical leaders should place what is best for the organization over their own personal interest. Ethical leaders need to train and develop employees throughout their careers. It's not something that you do during an orientation on the first day of an employee's job. It's something that you demonstrate regularly, consistently, and develop your employees at all times to not only model good values that the company has, but expect others around them and their employees to do the same thing. Ethical leaders establish reporting mechanisms. Ethical leaders understand employee values and perceptions. Ethical leaders recognize the limits of organizational rules and values. Sometimes we have to do things based on principle, even though there may not be any specific rules or regulations or policies in place. Ethical leaders never operate in a silo of decision making. They understand that they are a part of the whole. Because if you operate on silo, that means you don't engage everybody else and you don't consider the impact of your decisions on others. The strength of ethical leaders involves recognizing their own weaknesses as well as relying on others to help them. So there is the level of interdependency among leaders and their followers and the suppliers and the vendors and everybody else that they depend on through interdependence. Ethical leaders encourage employees to reach their full potential and emphasize their role as helping to create value for all key stakeholders. Ethical leadership is based on a holistic thinking view, which seems to embrace the complex and challenging issues companies face every single day in today's complex world. Strong ethical leaders are those who are passionate about the organization and who act in the organization's best interest, both short-term, but more importantly, long-term best interest. Ethical leadership is highly unlikely without a strong personal character for each person. Ethical leaders do not wait for ethical problems to arise. They are proactive in their decision making based on core values and universal principles. So these ethical leaders identify potential risks, emerging risks, and they develop plans in relevant processes to deal with those risks. Ethical leaders model the organization's values every single day and consistently. If leaders do not actively serve as role models for the company's core values, then those values eventually become nothing more than just lip service or talking points. So be a good role model. What are the benefits of ethical leadership? You should know that ethical leadership has a direct impact on the corporate culture of any organization. Ethical leaders tend to communicate as well as monitor an organization's values, ensuring that employees are familiar with the company's purpose as well as the company's beliefs. A firm is only as good as its employees, so instilling employees with a very strong sense of integrity is crucial to the creation of an ethical organizational culture and thereby a successful organization that has an advantage through its human resources and obviously has hopefully a sustainable advantage over competitors in the industry. Ethical leadership can also lead to higher employee satisfaction as well as higher employee commitment. This is where good organizational citizenship comes in. Ethical leadership is a foundational requirement for impacting the long-term market valuation of the organization. There is a positive association between the ethical commitment of a company's employees and the company's valuation actually in the stock market or in Wall Street. Corporate social responsibility also seems to impact investors' decisions in terms of whether they should invest in your company or not. Actually, corporate social responsibility is negatively related to long-term ethical risks, and investors view risk as one of those factors when they are actually deciding whether to invest in a company and buy stocks or not. Through the creation of a favorable relationship with their employees, with their customers, with investors, with regulators, ethical leaders tend to create significant competitive advantages in value for their companies. So as you can see, there are many benefits to ethical leadership. Let us look at ethical leadership in organizational culture now. Ethical leaders generally adopt one of two approaches to their leadership within the company. First, they can have a compliance-based approach which emphasizes obedience to the rules, to the policies and regulations, and they set processes in place to ensure compliance. This type of approach actually can deter illegal conduct and stress a culture of avoidance certain behaviors. Second is an integrity-based approach which views ethics as an opportunity to implement certain core values. Leaders who adopt an integrity-based approach take responsibility for the company's ethical culture, and they hold employees accountable for practicing good ethical behaviors in the core practices that they have identified. And also, this type of integrity-based approach not only empowers employees, but it helps them integrate ethical values in relevant principles that are espoused by the firm based on their corporate culture and the foundational principles. And finally, this integrity-based approach helps companies understand when questionable practices are occurring and where possible, new ethical issues are arising. So what would you do? Would you focus based on integrity-based approach or compliance-based approach? In other words, do you want compliance or do you want commitment? So you can force somebody to comply with your directives, but keep in mind that compliance-based approach of leadership to ethics basically means it's temporary. As long as you're monitoring employees, they'll do exactly what you ask them to do. But what happens when you're no longer here? Will they be committed to the principles and values of the organization if you're not monitoring all the time? So perhaps an integrity-based approach might be more sustainable in long term compared to the short-term compliance approach style of leadership with regards to ethics. Another way to classify leadership types includes many different categories, something like the unethical leader, the apathetic leader, and the ethical leader. Now, the unethical leader is usually egocentric and often does whatever it takes to achieve the company's objectives in his or her own personal objective. Remember, the word being egocentric. In other words, an egocentric person thinks my way or the highway, my way is better than yours, so we need to do things for my benefit, and that's all I care about. One type of unethical leader can be the psychopathic type of leader or corporate psychopath, which is characterized as having superficial charm, no conscience, grandiose self-worth, little or no empathy and enjoyment in flouting the rules. Do you know this type of unethical leader in today's environment? Do you know this type of leader in the school system, in the educational arena, in the community, in politics, in history? Well, who do you picture when you hear the characteristics associated with that psychopathic leader or corporate psychopath? So again, think about those individuals. They do exist, and unfortunately, when they have too much power, at least position power, they can use that in a negative way through transactional purposes to get what they want. You also have sometimes the apathetic leaders. They're not necessarily unethical, but they care sort of little for ethics within the company. The leader views ethics as relative and optional in a business context. So if they can get away with doing something that you and I may not do, they probably will do it. Ethical leaders include ethics at every operational level and stage of their decision making in their day-to-day business activities. So this third type that we consider ethical leaders must model the ethical values that they promote. We know that ethical leadership is a requirement for building a culture where ethical decisions occur every single day. So I hope you're going to be the third type, the ethical leader. You can do it. You just have to clarify your values and make sure you stick with it. When other people do something inappropriate, you need to intervene and basically create awareness by stating your perspective. Whether they change their behavior or not may not be up to you, but at least you sleep better because you intervene to at least point out the side effects or the negative impact that it can have on certain constituencies or stakeholders. As always, remember that ethical behavior is a skill. You need to police, you need to evaluate, and you need to improve your ethical muscles regularly so you can be the best ethical leader who can manage and lead and guide others effectively in any given situation. Good luck.